Hi, welcome to today's lesson. My name is Dr. Uche Jacob. Today we'll be looking at the politics of development and underdevelopment. Now, the learning outcome. At the end of this unit, you should be able to define development and as well discuss the contributions of development scholars to the understanding of the concept of development. We will as well identify the characteristics of development and the scope of development. Again, you will be able to understand the two major theories of development and underdevelopment, namely modernization and dependency theory. Lastly, you will be able to critique modernization and dependency theory. Look at the definitions of development. There are so many definitions that have been provided by scholars of development. However, for this particular unit, we've adopted two definitions that would help and guide us in these studies. Now, what is development? Some see development as industrialization and modernization, or even westernization, and its artifacts. For instance, cars, radios, TVs, aeroplanes, trains, and the rest of them. However, in contemporary definition, the term development refers to the eradication of extreme poverty and hunger, illiteracy, maternal and child mortality, malaria, HIV/AIDS, gender inequality, epidemic outbreak, and the rest of it. Now, there are so many other definitions that have been provided by the scholars of development. For instance, from the Western angle or from the Western perspective, we have W.W. Rostow, who defined development as a process of induced economic growth of a social change in an internally stratified world. Another author, namely Walter Rodney, defined development as improvement of the living conditions of the people. For this particular class, we've defined development as a holistic process through which a society expresses economic and socio-political transformation, economic and socio-political transformation, which improves the living condition of its inhabitants. Now let's quickly look at the characteristics of development. First, it produces or it offers adequate social infrastructures such as constant electricity, good network of roads, potable water, well-equipped and functional schools and hospitals, and sound communication network. It also provides security to protect lives and property, good governance and political stability, industrialization. From industrialization, jobs can be generated, the economy can be stimulated, high savings and investments from both individuals and companies or institutions, strong economic which can result to job creation and wealth. Now let's look at the scope of development. Now, development is a multi-dimensional process. Thus, its scope is very broad. It ranges from economic, political to socio-cultural development. Now, let's look at the economic dimension of development. Economic development entails increase in the wealth of a nation through expanded production of goods and services. Now we have economic development and economic growth, but there are differences. Economic development and economic growth differs. For instance, economic growth simply implies the increase in GDP or increase in the per capita or increase in income of the state or income of the nation. However, economic development means the adequate or judicious use of this income or GDP to the extent that it improves the living standard of everyone in the society. I will give you an instance. In 2014-2015, during Goodluck Jonathan's administration, Nigeria became the first or number one um, economy or the largest economy in Africa. However, it became the largest economy in Africa because of the increase in GDP or increase in the per capita. However, this did not translate to development because the money ended up in the hands of few people who looted the money. This means that Nigeria experienced economic growth but did not, you know, have that or translate that into economic development because the money was supposed to be used for road construction, hospitals, and schools. But that did not happen. It went into private pockets. Now, let's consider the political dimension of development. The political development entails strong institutions that have legitimate authority to guarantee equilibrium in the system through proper management of distribution of resources. On the social dimension or socio-cultural dimension, sociocultural development involves the evolution of national norms, values, and identity. Also, it entails improvement in social infrastructure, regular supply of power, potable water, good roads, and network. It also means sociocultural development also refers to the availability of skilled labor or availability of skilled individuals, as no country has ever developed without skilled individuals that contribute to the development of the country, such as engineers, doctors, lecturers, and other skilled manpowers that work in different sectors of the economy. Now let's look at the major theories of development and underdevelopment. But before we do that, let's look at the definition of theory. A theory is a set of ideas that are logical, which establishes a correlation between causation of a phenomenon and its effects. There are three things that theory helps us to do. Theory helps us to organize phenomena, allow us to predict what will happen in the new situation, and help generate research. Now, we have two theories that we've adopted in this particular lesson, although we have several theories that can be applied to the study of development and underdevelopment. However, for this particular unit, we've adopted two theories that we will look at, and that is modernization theory and dependency theory. Modernization theory sees development from the prism of Western civilization. Its major exponents include Gabriel Ammon, Bingham Paul, David Gorman, and Lucian Pye. Dependency theory is also known as underdevelopment theory or the radical school of thought or the neo-Marxist theory. Dependency theory sees development and underdevelopment as two sides of the same coin, in the sense that they are the inevitable outcomes and the physical manifestations of the world capitalist system and its inherent contradictions and exploitation. Critique of modernization and dependency theory. There are some loopholes or some shortcomings of these two theories, just as every other theory has their own weaknesses. The two theories we've adopted also have their weaknesses, and here we have outlined some of the weaknesses of these theories. For instance, the modernization theory. Modernization theory regards Western culture and institutions as the best and superior to other nations' cultures, and that is why they have projected and promoted Western values as the only way to actualize development. But we notice from studies that there are countries like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates that do not practice some of the Western cultures or Western values or Western principles like democracy or capitalism, But yet these countries have actualized development. It then means that countries can actually apply their locally designed economic strategies and apply it and still develop. Modernization school of thought has also been critical for being ahistorical. Modernization theory did not recognize some of the historical events that actually shaped the economy of the world. For instance, slave trade and colonialism actually contributed to the development of the West. However, they do not acknowledge this. They only think that the value they apply or the Western values they apply were only the sole reason why they have developed in the Western countries, while Africa have not developed because they've not been able to adopt the Western values and apply it in the economies. Now, it is riddled with fallacy of taxonomic dualism. Thus, it's divided the entire world into two opposite societies, the rich nations in one side and the poor nations on the other side. The rich nations is always tagged the core, whereas the poor nations are always tagged the periphery. The argument here is that the two countries cannot, the world cannot just be divided on two opposing sides because development actually is relative. Every country has their own level of development. No country can be said not to have development at all. However, every country has their own way of development and they have appreciated or developed in a certain way. Now let's look at dependency theory. First, the dependency theory's broad notion of center-periphery relations in the global state economic system is ambiguous. Secondly, the dependency school ignored the role of corruption, bad governance, and political instability in the underdevelopment of the third world nations. Third, total delinking from the global capitalist system is one of the major recommendations of dependency school of thought as the only answer to the third world development crisis. However, we do understand that this cannot be possible and that is why it's being criticized. There is no way African nations or the third world nations can totally delink their economy from the global capitalist system because the world is increasingly globalizing and because of this interdependence, no nation can actually operate in isolation. In conclusion, I believe you now understand the meaning of development. You now also understand the contributions of development scholars to the concept of development. You can now understand or you now know the characteristics and scope of development. You now know also the major theories of development and underdevelopment. And as well, you can now confidently outline some of the critique of modernization and dependency theory. And that's it, guys. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.